What's going on, guys? We're here with Giao Nguyen, who is a local Seattle filmmaker and director. I got to see his newest film, Ocean's Arrival, recently. And so I wanted to have him in and just talk to him about his movie. So, Yao, first of all, thank you for coming all the way out here.
Dude, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about the film and get to know you better.
Yeah.
It's the shortest day of the year.
Another solstice already.
Ruth! How long has it been?
It's good to see you.
How are you? I'm swell.
6 years go by, and here we are asking one another, why haven't we stayed the same people?
Something doesn't feel right.
Who is that?
We should have kept you out.
Ruth, look at me. Look at everything that's happened.
Why won't you answer me?
Not you two. It was not your fault.
Say something!
Editor John here from the future, stepping in real quick just to say that Ocean's Arrival is officially out now on Amazon Prime Video. So any of you can click the link in the description, or we'll also put it on screen for where you can go to rent it for $5 or $6. Go support Yao. His movie is really phenomenal. I can't believe it's his first feature because it really does not feel like an amateur film. It's a great watch with friends or with your family or whatever. So go check it out. It's winter break. You're not doing shit anyway. All right. Go watch a new movie. So I'll read the little synopsis or log line that I found online, and then we'll kind of dive into the film and the process behind it and everything. So on the winter solstice, 4 friends reunite at the family's beachside cabin after years apart. From the ocean, a mysterious stranger arrives seeking refuge, eventually pitting the friends against one another. Fantasy, fear, and reality blend together as the days unfold, culminating in a 60-minute psychological drama.
Yep.
Did you write that yourself?
With my producer friend Mark, we were trying to find the best way to like describe the film in like a short amount, but not reveal too much.
Yeah, that must be tough though, because to you, like, you know the ins and outs of the story. It's your baby, it's your creation, and then having to condense it down. Was that a tough process?
A little bit. I think that I was thinking a little bit too about people wouldn't watch. It's like Ocean's Arrival's on like other really big streaming platforms where it's competing against like other things. Because I know how important thumbnails are, log lines, and reviews are. But most of the people who've seen it want to support the film, want to support me. So they'll be like, "Oh, cool." Like they just kind of want to know what it's about.
Yeah.
But even before I knew what to say about that question, my friends were like, "Okay, so what's it about?" So it used to be like a 2-minute like, so there's these kids, and then it became what it is now. It became a much shorter like 3-sentence logline.
Yeah, that question. Hey, what's it about? Yeah. It's like that for any movie that's almost impossible to quickly describe, let alone your own creation.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I was lucky enough to see the film at the West Sound Film Festival recently. Ooh. You guys actually won the festival for Best Feature Film.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal because you were there to see it. I wasn't there to see it. But I know that the team, they represented us, and it's kind of surreal. Like, just know that, like, to me, it was a student film, my senior project in school, but it's also out there at festivals, and like, I'm trying to get it out there so that other people can see it, but we're also getting recognition, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. That's got to be so cool. So I really want to dive into what you just said about how it was a student film, and I really want to dive into the process behind creating the script and creating the team and like developing it and the struggles you guys had along the way. But first, I want to just express what Ocean's Arrival was to me and like how I felt about it. And then since some of the people listening probably haven't watched it or haven't got a chance to see it yet, we won't give away too much about the plot or any spoilers or anything. But To me, Ocean's Arrival was an exploration of how we process trauma, the stories we tell ourselves to cope or rationalize our life, as well as the disconnect that can occur between friends when our lives start to grow apart.
Yeah, I love that.
When I watched it, I obviously like to make videos like talking about movies and stuff. And so to me, those were like the three things that when I left the theater, I was like, that seemed like some of the things he was trying to hit home. Let's just start off. To you, like, where did the story come from originally? Like, what was the spark for it, and how did you develop it in terms of the script and really, we'll get into everything. But where did it start?
Yeah. It started about, I'd say like a little over a year ago, in my capstone class. At the end of spring quarter 2021, professor said, okay, you've come up with 3 different ideas for your senior project and all the seniors. And I graduated in theater. So my background's in theater performance. So I'm an actor, but now I'm like directing as well. And I like do the film thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So theater is super important to me, but also I think recognizing that the story isn't based on the gear, because theater isn't. It's really just, they kind of cut the middleman out. And during that time last spring, I was in a theater theory class. So we were reading a lot of like really famous plays and controversial work, but also stuff that's like pioneering the path for a lot of like upcoming playwrights and stuff. And the biggest, probably my favorite genre was all the dinner table dramas, which I think works really well in theater, but it's not like we see a lot of just movies that are set in one room, one afternoon or one night.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's be honest. I want to try something with my senior project. Like, let's be ambitious, but what can I do to bring theater and film together? I loved reading dinner table dramas. I was like, okay, let's do a dinner table drama about some friends for the film. And some of my past film work, I did a lot of like short scenes before. I have a short film series where there are vignettes. Not all of them are connected, but I was like, okay, let's make one connected story that's more ambitious than the film series I did before. I've done a documentary it's 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's do something bigger than 50 minutes. I can't do a 90 minute. It's too long. Yeah. I was like, let's be honest. I chose 60 minutes. It's what Black Mirror is. Stranger Things is 60 minutes ish. I mean, now that's like super long.
Yeah.
But like, it's if this was in a series, it'd be an episodic length.
Yeah.
Just something that it's not too long. But I was like, okay, cool. What can I tell a story in 60 minutes? So I was taking dinner table dramas with friends. And the original idea of the film was it was going to be set in this like snowy cabin. Same thing.
Yeah.
There's some, not like time jumps, but there's like, you're trying to figure out where are we in time right now and why are we there?
It's not necessarily linear the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. There's that linear aspect. Again, in the original idea, there was someone arriving at the house, and I was like, oh, what happens when I think we're all pretty comfortable with the people we hang out with, and there isn't a lot of like, the issues in meeting different people. But I was like, what about meeting someone you don't know, or like what happens when a stranger arrives?
Yeah.
So I liked that idea, and then while last summer, I shot down a lot of bad conversations about what was happening in the house, because at the end of the day, Ocean's Arrival to me, there's a plot and it's an action-based plot, but it's also a relationship-based plot, I think.
Yeah.
So it was really hard getting to where it is now, figuring what is the relationship or what are they talking about? Yeah, they're in a house. Yeah, there's someone arrives. But like, what do they have? What are they actually saying?
Yeah.
And,
how did you, to your point, I don't know exactly how you worded it, but you said last summer you were working through different things that they could have like issues over, or different ways they would like talk with each other. Like, what do you mean? Yeah,
it's a great question. Early on, it was like, great. I know the essential, like the story points I want to hit on, but with an actual 60-minute film, and unlike the short stuff I've done in the past, like you need exposition.
Yeah.
And you need to like build these characters a little bit, build the world. And we're all kind of like working into that and working, how can we build a better world, or kind of develop these characters even more? And after I knew where I wanted the story to go, I was just like, okay, now what are they saying in the room?
Yeah.
What are these scenes going to fill to make us either trust these characters, not trust these characters? And that was what was really hard for me to figure out. I was like, great. So like at 9:00 at night, this guy's going to arrive. The main character arrives at the house at like 5:00. I'm like, what happens in 4 hours? What are we gonna like? What do friends do and what do friends talk about? Assuming that it's been some time has passed, and despite I think like whatever joy they could have, it has to be smothered by whatever, someone's gonna leave that day.
Yeah.
Let's say that there has to be something that's divisive enough that causes them to have a conflict.
Yeah. The
so it's just-
incident.
yeah.
What's the inciting incident? Like
Exactly.
something's got to happen to like lead to like the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And to your point about how they like, these characters, they actually have to interact. And like when you're creating the story, like what do friends talk about for 5 hours when they're like on a vacation together? And I would imagine that process is probably pretty difficult for like a first time director. And I'm sure you've written stuff in the past, but something that I think is interesting is you hear people talk about like, I don't know, at least I've heard it described as like premise movies where like you go watch something and it's really interesting, not necessarily because of the character in it, but just because it's like a really unique premise or concept. But like, yeah, I just think you did a great job of like in the short runtime, you had to develop these characters. So it's not just like a premise that gets stale. And like you did, I think you did a great job of
Thank you.
fleshing out some of these characters, particularly Ruth. That's her name, right?
Yeah.
Ruth. So this was your capstone senior project. Could you just fill me in? Like, how does that work? Because you said you were a theater major for acting. How did you then decide? Can you just kind of pick what your capstone is? Like, could you do an acting project, or what made you want to like write and then direct this?
Yeah. With all the seniors, we basically, professors said, just do something that challenges you, and they'll know when like you're choosing something that isn't challenging you.
Yeah.
I'm not throwing shade at anyone. But my advisor, I told her I want to do this last spring, and she was like, okay, show me a budget, show me a timeline, show me a plot. And I had all that going into the summer before writing. And then basically when I came back to school, it was all about it's like the business side, the school side of it, where like, do the assignments, do the check-ins about, have you found your cast? Do you have like a call sheet, a schedule for the shoot, or when are you going to do this? So it was all of that, where it was really nice to actually have someone checking in on you. And at the time it was really hard because I wanted to do this film that's pretty ambitious. And I know that even my advisor, she said that, yeah, I wouldn't ask, like, if another student said to do this, I'd probably tell them don't do it. Just because she knew I could do it. She knew that I've done enough small stuff in the past where I can take all the small stuff and make a big one.
Yeah.
So it was just a lot of the check-ins that was really hard too, because we had the deadline. I told myself at the beginning of last year, I said, I'm not going to leave college without finishing this film.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to submit a rough. I'm not going to submit even to festivals, a rough to festivals. I was like, no, I'm going to leave college. And that's why we had our premiere in May. I'm going to leave college with a finished film. And I made sure that happened.
And you did. That's incredible, man. I mean, what made you want to direct in particular though? Like, was there a point where you decided I want to be a director as opposed to an actor? Like, do you still want to act? And how did that decision get made? Because I'm sure there's other people who are, were actors that didn't go and direct their first feature.
Yeah.
Like, how did you make that decision?
Yeah. I think that so it was early in college, I started producing my own work. While I was acting, I feel like acting is difficult because it's not always something you can do by yourself. And they'll say you can just keep practicing. You can always practice by yourself in a room, practice your monologues. But also it's really hard to get, polished work out there. But you need the format.
Yeah.
Getting on stage is really difficult. Getting a space where people come and like buy tickets and sit down is also pretty difficult. But with, the advent of social media and posting a lot, I started doing a lot of shooting my own stuff, directing and editing my own stuff for the first 3 years of college. And then finally, when it came to like, let's make this big project, I could actually build a team where I said, okay, I could do everything myself except the actors. Like, that'd be more, click record, jump in front of the camera. Like I wasn't about to do that. But I did tell myself like, I'm going to find an awesome all-star team of people I enjoy being around. Not that they're pros at their job. I actually told the team that I said, I'm not here because you're the best sound mixer or you're the best actor. It's because I want to enjoy this time with you. And I think you've probably heard from the stories on set. The majority of Ocean's Arrival was shot in 5 days straight, and then 2 additional days of shooting later. So the main cabin sequences were all in 5 days. So I told them, I said, it's not about like if you're good. It's not even about like if you think you're like your resume. I didn't ask you because of your resume. I asked you because you seem super cool, and can we spend 5 days straight together? And we did, and it was like that. But I felt like, being able to direct and create my own stuff, it just cuts out like I'm not gonna wait for someone to give me a job.
Yeah.
Like even I'm so adamant about that. Even if it's a small team or a big team, I don't want to wait for someone to say, "Oh yeah, here's a role you can do." Yeah, my training is in storytelling and acting, and I'm like an actor director.
Yeah.
So whenever there's like something, you can probably kind of tell. If there's something I'm like trying to explain to someone, I'll stand up and show them.
Yeah.
I'll like act and then either give them inspirations or give them references to what they're talking about. Just because, in theater there isn't the camera side. But when I was directing, I was like, like let's build a team and not wait. I was just saying I'm not gonna wait for someone to like let me do it. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of creative people can resonate with that. But I think that mindset is also, it's a lot easier said than done. Like in my life, I felt like there's these moments where it's like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to go do it. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to go make my vision. And I'm just going to, like you said, I'm not going to wait for someone to give me a job. But then when you reach that point where you actually decide that, it's pretty stressful and overwhelming where you're like, wow, all right, if I'm going to do this, like I'm going to do it, but it's going to be a lot of work.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's really cool. Now I do want to dive into like the team and the production and all that. But while we're talking about college here, I thought it was interesting how you said having that structure of someone checking in and having actual assignments, which is kind of unique because, once you're out of college, if you're just making another indie film, you're not going to have someone who's saying, hey, this week we need X, Y, and Z done to make sure you're on track. It's just up to you. And so, how much do you think that helped you? And like, do you feel that going forward, will you implement stuff like that, like certain assignments for yourself, or what was that process like?
Yeah. That's a great question. Let's see.
Like, do you think that having it be a school project made it get done? Like, do you think if it wasn't a school project, you would have been able to still stick to that deadline of having it done by the end of college and get everything facilitated? Or did having that like team and mentor and deadlines like really benefit you?
Yeah. I say I agree with the former statement. That yes, I think that because it's a school project and it did it in college and it's under this umbrella of a student film, that was a catalyst for making it happen. I feel like there's so many times in life when our creative ideas have this shelf life that if you don't act on it right now, it's not going to happen. But it does help when there's someone asking you, tell me about this plot point, or how is casting going?
Yeah.
So that you don't feel like you're doing it by yourself. And it's nice to know that, okay, great, it's due. My last assignment was due like June 1st or something. Like it was, like I knew I had to get it done, and it wasn't just me doing it by myself. And I know that a lot of films, they don't ever make it out of the script phase, but also even when they shoot it, you can't get the sound mixing, you can't get color in. It's like there's so many things that like just won't happen for it that I just was like, okay, great. My professor's asking me how it's going and she wants to see a draft. If I don't edit it for myself, I'll edit it for her. I'll make sure that it needs to get done so she can give me a grade on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And if I will ever like bring in assignments based or something into my next films, probably not, but it is good to know that like all the like process work. It's like, can you jump through all the flaming hoops and do all your twists and twirls? Like maybe it might be just like, oh, maybe in the moment I might have thought, like what's the point?
Yeah.
I'm writing about what I'm actually creating, but now that I don't have to do it anymore, it'll just like, I think it'll just infuse. Like in hindsight, it was like difficult, but so worth it. So worth it to just like talk about what I'm already making, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be in a podcast like this, but someone's going to be like, why did you do this?
Yeah.
And if I don't have a good enough answer for it, then it just shows like, how much thought did you put into it?
Yeah. No, I mean, that point exactly is something that I actually really want to talk about near the end, because it's a question that I was really intrigued by after watching the film. But we'll get to that question later because I think it'd be better near the end. But
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about college in particular, because I think that obviously I've never directed a movie, never made a movie, but like I just, it seems as though having that sort of accountability every week or like every month with class would probably be a great way to like get the ball rolling and like figuring out how do I actually logistically make a movie. There's a lot of people who want to make movies and probably could make a movie, but it's just like, at least from an outside perspective, like what do you even do? Like, what does that even mean? Like on a day to day, like what does that actually mean? And I just think, you know, unless you go and really seek out like podcasts or random YouTube channels that are giving tutorials, a lot of it, people just have no idea where to start. Right. At least that's how it seems to me. Yeah. So this was your senior project. You decided to write it and direct it. Yeah. How long was that process from ideation to, you know, the idea is complete. Now we're starting to actually like get people involved and like try and find a location. Like how long was the lead up to that?
During the premiere weekend, I told everyone it's a year in the making, but it basically kind of was. So I'd say that summer, so June to fall 2021 was all thinking in here. I should have done more writing, but I didn't. September, first day of school, basically in September, I started putting thoughts into words. Yeah. Wrote some good stuff, wrote some bad stuff too. But it took about 2 months to write the script and build the team. Usually I don't like to pitch a project to people unless I have a script or a schedule. And I had neither of those things yet. Yeah. So at first, even people like, you know, the incredible Suzanne, I just told her, I'm doing this thing. And she was like, okay. Like she's like,
she was just down for it regardless.
Like at first we had a little like kind of like boba networking kind of talk about it. And I described her the idea, but even she was like, let me know when you actually have something concrete.
Yeah. Cause it's like, it's great, but I can't do anything with this until you actually have something.
Yeah. So it was,
by the way, Suzanne is the director of photography.
Yes. Sorry. I should say that. Yeah. Suzanne was the director of photography. And she didn't really get involved with the project until I could give her a script or a schedule. Cause I think that everyone's so busy in life and like, you know, there's a million things you could be doing that why do this? Yeah. So I'm really thankful for everyone who got on board with it. So the writing was between September to November, and it took about 2 months to write the 66-page script, with a lot of revisions and stuff like that. Yeah. And during that time, I also was inviting members to be part of the team. And I think that when people are considering making a film, and I still do this too, it's not like I'm rolling in the dough or like have huge production elements. But even then with casting, I feel like unless you're an actor in theater or film or casting director or something, it's really interesting, I feel like, casting for stuff, because these roles, I wrote them knowing who I could cast them for. But at the end of the day, there was 2 roles who I didn't know who to fill.
Who were the 2?
It was Tara and June.
Okay. So you knew like Ruth was going to be, or you had the idea of when writing Ruth, like that you would have Bree be that character? Yeah, actually there was, with Ruth, I had another actor in mind who was unable to was illegible to be part of it. They were like too busy for it. And it was a lot of like, because we had such a short amount of time and like so small of a budget, I was like, okay, I can't pay anyone to like fly out anywhere. So Did you have a budget? What was the budget?
The budget was, it's funny because we have a questionable budget, but it's more like how much did we spend on it? Yeah. At the end of the film, this film was a $16,000 film.
Wow.
With everything included. Premiere weekend, the renting of the Airbnb for the shooting, gear, equipment. That involves paying a stipend to the crew. Everyone in the cast got paid a little bit.
Oh, that's nice.
And then, you know, there's food involved with that too. But
And is that facilitated through the university?
No, that's all on me.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you finance it?
I fronted it and borrowed from my family. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's incredible. I mean,
Thank you.
You know, like I said, once again, I'm not trying to sound like I know a ton about the film industry, but it just seems like financing a film in general is like really, really difficult.
Yeah, I know that like a lot of people, they'll do the GoFundMe or they'll do the other Kickstarter for their stuff. But it was, when I was thinking about doing it for the film, it was really hard because I knew it's difficult because there's people who support you, but monetary support is such a different aspect in this field where like projects, they can't start without money. And if they don't make money afterwards, it's not like, that's also bad. So you have to just be making money the whole time, but you need money to like pay people and everyone. And I wish I could pay everybody more, John. I wish I could give everyone like a better stipend for what their time was. But I was just like, I'm not going to do one just because I need to show, this is my film to show everyone. For the next film, I'll do a Kickstarter or something, or I'll crowdfund for that because I've seen this before.
Yeah.
But now that people have seen like, oh, it's a real film with a real score, real cast, real production elements. Okay, I can see what Yao's working on the next thing type of thing.
Yeah. I don't know if you even know, but I'd be curious in terms of, getting funding or investors. I've read a bit about like the ways that people used to do like independent funding and like contacting investors and stuff. I really don't know much about that world, but like, I guess my question is, if a film, your first film does pretty well, which like you've won the West Sound Festival, do you believe there's a way in which you could contact investors independently and like fund your next film that way? Or is that something that you feel like is maybe later down the road?
No, yeah, I think that's something I'm trying to figure out the world or how to break into that side of it too. That's like the money, that's like the marketing side of the film industry that most people like don't really know about, or there's a lot of trade deals going on.
Yeah.
But I definitely think so. I think it also would have to make sense of like which investors are investing into this film. Because I know back to my like theater roots, back in the day, they used to ask people like, oh, playwrights, can you write this play because I want you to talk about this political issue?
Yeah.
And nowadays there's all this talk about HBO Max and Netflix where like they're making films not just because like they love the story, but can it fit in our catalog?
Yeah.
And right now I'm it's not like I'm compromising, but I don't know where I am as a director yet, and I don't know what kind of brand am I as a director that, aside from my close family, friends, and the local people who've seen the film, like who wants to support these type of stories?
Yeah.
And until I get someone who wants to back that, I'll probably keep asking around, but also like trying to find ways like through TikTok or YouTube of like the people will decide if they like it. I should try to get it out as much as I can.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have an idea of, you were saying like my brand as a director, in your eyes, how do you view yourself as a director? Like what are the stories you want to tell? And I guess that probably ties into what inspired you to get into this creative field in the first place. But yeah, fundamentally, like, do you know what that is yet? Like what that fundamental aspect of who you are as an artist and what you're trying to tell? Or do you feel like that just kind of evolves?
Yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly as an artist. The type of stories I want to tell, I'm trying to describe them in a few different ways. They're really raw, abstract in a way of like, I think extrapolating on human emotion. I feel like when it comes to, when I did a lot of like camera work myself in my past couple projects, I felt like I want the audience to feel and see what the characters are feeling. So almost all of my stories are character based.
Yeah.
I probably won't do like National Geographic or like, not that they won't call me, but like, not that
Hey,
like,
if you guys call me, I'll make one.
it's like I'll do a nature documentary.
Yeah.
But I think that something about the darkest, your darkest or brightest days, and telling stories about that. In that, I love talking about time, and I love talking about families, and everything extrapolates from relationships, I think.
Yeah.
And even more so like with Ocean's Arrival or like other projects, I'm like, how can I make the most riveting story where you can give it a log line of like, oh, two friends are arguing, but like, there's so many different layers to that where I'm honestly right now trying to be honest of like, what kind of budget can my stories tell? And they all come from the actors right now. They all come from the minimal crews. And and I love just daring work. I love stuff that like makes your skin crawl. But also I love things that like realistically filmed, but also abstract within. There is something weird about what's going on in real life. I love talking about stuff like that.
No, I mean, I totally felt that with Ocean's Arrival. I mean, the cinematography and just the feeling felt very real. Like it felt like the conversations were natural and real, but at the same time, it also is playing with some cool psychological ideas there. So yeah, it definitely, just so you know, it did shine through with the
Thank you.
film. So that's awesome. I want to touch on some of that, what you just said later, but I think it ties into a question near the end. So
Sure.
for now, let's dive into talking about the actual creation of it. So you got the script done.
Got the script done.
It got edited.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. Did you have the budget kind of secured before, or figured out at least beforehand?
Like semi. I overshot, let's say, my budget by about $7,000.
Okay.
I aimed it for it to be lower. But yeah, so once we had our script, and with the script and the schedule, I started inviting team members in, on the basis of, it's not about if you're the best at your job. It's about if you're a cool person and the community and, bringing all the elements in. We got to work in December. I had 3 weeks of rehearsals with the actors before we shot. And like theater, I rehearsed it with them. So I just told them, hey, by the way, when we get to set, we have 7 hours of daylight.
Yeah.
We don't have time to run takes like big movies do. We don't have time to like do this again. Like,
Yeah.
like everyone, we're just like, okay, great. We got to like watch the time and like keep it going.
Were there certain, I don't really know how it works on set, but are there
Yeah.
times where like you do one take and then you're like, all right, that's the take. Like we're moving on to the next one. I mean, or would you get at least like a couple takes?
We should have got more takes, but a couple of the times it was like one take wonders.
Wow.
But I mean, to me, there's like levels to it where like, yeah, we're watching performance, we're watching technical side, camera focus, sound, all that stuff. And I'm also like being aware of the environment, because being at the water and also being in the house, and like, granted, we lived in the house while we shot it, so we moved stuff constantly, and it's like
Yeah.
consistency issues of like making sure that looks right, or does
Oh
your
my
hair
God.
look right?
I can't even imagine the continuity, just trying to,
Yeah.
you're like, oh no, the clouds are in the wrong spot.
And like you're like, oh well, and then a lot, shout out to our post-production teams for like cleaning up a lot of that stuff too. But there's just truly a lot of things to worry about. I feel like in a shot where like, rather than documentary style or run and gun type of things, it's like all this money and time is to make sure it's right. So you might as well get it right, or you might as well, like, sometimes some of the takes in the scene, or in one of the scenes was like 5 to 6 minutes. It was the one of like Bree and Anna, who's June and Ruth, talking outside on the porch.
Yeah.
That we shot at Blue Hour. It was extremely difficult because we shot on 2 different days, because the first day the sun went down faster. So when we did their close-ups,
Yeah.
it was just darker.
Oh.
So it was like, okay,
If I remember correct, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good. Yeah.
On that shot, if I remember correctly, you didn't have any close-ups, right?
The first section we didn't. The
Oh,
second time
okay.
when we came back, we cut in closer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that was the thing. We were like, okay, do we just use the close-ups or do we use the wide shot? And it was just like monitoring, like, great. If the actors flubbed, sometimes I'll just say like, just hold, camera, audio, hold. Can we get back on? Like, or can you get back there, or should we restart?
Yeah.
And it's like a 5-minute take. So it was really hard to like, we're like, can we get audio right, sound right, focus right,
Yeah.
acting performance right, and make sure there aren't a bunch of like planes flying by?
Yeah.
It's a lot. I'm very thankful how it turned out.
So since you have an acting background, do you feel like that gave you a different perspective or approach to it? Because I mean, obviously, it sounds like even leading up to production, your approach was maybe a bit different. You said like how you did 3 weeks of rehearsals. But in that sense, like as the director, when you're behind the camera and you're on set, you guys have limited time. Does your brain, like, do you feel like you view it in a different way since you're an actor yourself? Like, do you pick up on little nuances in the way that their expressions were like portrayed in a way that maybe you wouldn't if you weren't an actor yourself?
Yeah. That's a great question. I feel like because of my theater background, I'm mostly attuned to making sure that the actors feel comfortable with each other. I don't really care if like, it just depends of where the camera is in relationship to the actors, but I usually block actors first. So I have them, whenever I'm writing a script or something, it depends if I'm going for a really specific cinematography shot, I'll write it in the script because it's not based on the actors.
Yeah.
But most of the time, since I like love the relationships and I love the close-ups and feeling the intimacy, I'll make sure that the actors feel comfortable with each other first. So that was what those 3 weeks were. So that when they laugh during the party scene or when they laugh and argue or fight,
Yeah.
they're comfortable being able to go at it with each other. Because I know that a lot of film directors or a lot of film crews, they don't spend that time.
Yeah.
Like
the actors barely even know a single thing about each other.
yeah, and like I get it. It's like a time thing where you don't have the budget or the time to like do all these rehearsals. But like I was like, you know what? For a 60-minute film, we might as well spend 3 weeks of like let's get them into the classrooms and rehearse as much as we can, so that on the day of I could like kind of with the theater background again. I told the actors we won't have time for unless you flub the line, unless there's a huge mishap. I probably won't cut the scene or call cut unless there's like a huge issue. I'm like, you're gonna have to like push through it.
Yeah.
And they did that, and the actors are the best ever. And you know, like it was what it was. Like, you know, and now I realize, especially with like film versus theater, the difference is like, the camera's so much closer. So yeah, so when I was watching some of the shots on the day of, I'm like, wow, I didn't notice that about them.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated by hearing about the distinctions between theater versus film because I don't know, I've listened to a few different interviews. I don't know who. I think maybe Tom Hanks started as like I don't know, it could be someone else, but I think it's Tom Hanks who started as a stage actor. And then, you know, got into film. And I've just heard different people express just like how different that experience is as an actor. And like the goals are different because like, and it's all like in real time when you're on stage. There's no like cutting or redoing it. And so I don't know. I would imagine it's probably different for these actors to adjust to like if they've never done a film before.
Yeah.
To getting in that flow. And I've also heard actors say how, you know, when you're doing a film, people don't realize that, 80% of the time is just sitting there waiting to be ready to film.
Exactly.
And then when you actually film, it's such a short chunk and then it's like cut.
Yeah.
And then they're no longer acting and it's just waiting again.
Yeah. Like there's all the elements of film that make it so awesome and spectacular. It's like also the problem with film. It's like, yeah, like a lot of the actors, so many times I had to be like, sorry, we need 30 more minutes to prep.
Yeah.
Can you just chill?
They're just sitting
They're
there.
like sitting there waiting. Like they're in costume, ready to go. But yeah, like when the camera turns on, it's like, you have to assume the engine's already running.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll use like takes 3, 4, 5, just because take 1 was like,
they're getting into it again.
yeah. And it's hard though, because it's like, it's also like sports. Like, you warm up so that you don't look like you're warming up when you're already running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the question that I asked after the film ended at the West Sound Festival, there was a Q&A, which you unfortunately couldn't be there.
Yeah.
But I asked, as the director, how do you get the team all on the same page philosophically? Because, this film, without giving too much away, it does have some pretty heavy and like really interesting psychological and philosophical aspects to it. With what Ruth is going through and experiencing. And I just think, even with my friends, different people view life in way different ways than I do and have different life experiences and maybe resonate with certain things that other people don't. And so how did you, because there was some pretty clear themes that I picked up on when watching. And how do you make sure that all the people, not only the actors, but like the people behind the camera and like working on lights, how do you make sure everybody knows, like, not just the words that are being spoken, but like what the actual message and vision is in your head?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Well, to me, there's a few different angles to that. I think table work's really important for actors, especially. I'm a big, before we get on our feet, we all have to know the timeline. And if there isn't, especially
timeline in what sense? What do you mean by that?
I think plot wise, let's say we all need to know. There's a lot of basic questions I think that like, especially in my theater training and acting, it's like answering what time of day is it? If an actor can't tell you, there's a problem.
In any moment of the script,
maybe
you're saying
ish. It's
okay.
like how important is that? But also like that's a thing where like production or like gaffer, who our gaffer was Barb Hoffman. It's like what time of day is it supposed to be? Okay, well like we'll set it for daylight, but then the actor is like what? I thought it was at night. It's like huge disconnects.
Yeah.
So I think that like I spend a lot of time making sure that we have a lot of production meetings to kind of cover it. Obviously read the script, but also like when it came to the technical things of like, what time is it? Where are we? What are you wearing? Where all these things of like, the more that those same questions come up, it means I have to put more emphasis in making sure everyone is really aware. And then some of the philosophical stuff where like, what kind of message are we saying? Sometimes I didn't actually put that much emphasis on making sure every person on the team needs to know it. Because, for example, some of the characters who appear later in the film, they won't ever know. They won't ever know what happened at the house.
Yeah.
It's like, and sometimes I'll play into that for when we're rehearsing. I was thinking like, oh, what if we, for our therapist character, what if I not send any of the scenes about the cabin?
Yeah.
Like how much would the therapist have to work harder because that's realistic?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think like in terms of my directing like pillars, I really believe in a good leader is a good servant to everyone. So as many times as I could, whether it be the kind of like the vision or the story or elements of the team, that like making sure everyone's really comfortable, and I'm not like burdening them with like what my vision needs to be. For my friend Matt, boom operator, he didn't care what it is.
Yeah.
He's just gonna hold the mic.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, can you point it this way? It's like, so he's adding to it, but it's knowing that like, how can I help you do the best job you can so that when all like A through Z pieces come together, the audience will be like, oh, that's what I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, something that I thought was really cool was, you weren't there to answer the question at the film festival, but some of the crew members and the cast members kind of answered in their opinion for you. And one thing they said was that you would be very involved with the team and be like, what do you guys think Ruth would do in this scenario? Or like, why would this character like react this particular way? And kind of have that as like an open discussion as opposed to like, it's decided like this is what they do and why they do it. And I think that's really cool because at least for me, when I'm watching a film, the ones that I get really invested in personally are usually like pretty contained character studies or just intimate stories. I really love those. And I always, as I'm watching, I think I'm subconsciously pondering like, oh, why did the character like make that decision? Or like what happened in this universe of the film? Like assuming this film is like real, because the whole idea is that you're transported into this like story that feels very real. So I always kind of, as a viewer, I'm always wondering, why did that character do that? Or like, what did they say when they got home? Like maybe we didn't even see this scene, but like, what was the character thinking or feeling? And maybe I'm getting way too like esoteric here, but
perfect. Yeah.
I think it's cool. And I guess also relating to that, I've read how some directors have a style where it's very rigid and like the actor says this line at this particular moment in this particular way, and it has to be perfect. But then you hear the other end of the spectrum where, there's other directors like Terrence Malick, who I love. And I've read that he doesn't even have set lines for his characters. He just has a situation that he puts the characters in. And then he lets them just interact as if it's like real life. And there's not even a set line they have to say or a spot they have to stand. And obviously both of those are extremes. But my point with all that is I think it's cool that it was an open discussion with the team to kind of figure out what they think about it.
Exactly. No, I totally hear you. I will say maybe some of them will say I've had my moments where I'm like, hit it again, like try it again.
No, I mean, I'm sure. And I'm sure every director and that's part of the director's responsibility is to say like, hey, that was great, but that's not what that's not what I like need right here in this particular moment.
Yeah. I think that this process was really special because I know in the future I won't always work on stuff that I wrote myself, but because I wrote it like, I think that the story evolves every single level. And I strongly believe in that. It's the same way where music, where it's, you're not reading the lyrics of the song. You're listening to the performer. You're listening to the song itself. And I even told the actors that with the performing of the film, I said, yes, I do believe the word is truth. The script, and same thing in theater, it's revered. The script is revered.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when we have one take, and what comes is what's gonna be.
Yeah.
Like if you have to hit it a certain way, if it feels more comfortable to do it a certain way, that is you making a choice as an actor, and that's what your artistic contribution is. And I'm like totally on board with that.
Yeah. Well, and are there times where you and the team have it in your head that you're going to do it a certain way, but then the day of when you go to film, maybe something slightly different happens and you're like, whoa, that was actually great. Like where, something you didn't even plan happens and you're like, that was perfect.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that with our pool scenes, which early on in the film, obviously there's a lot of specific confusion or like there's mystery around them. But I think that it comes with, especially our crew, like it's just like active problem solving. Like lighting certain scenes, if like, it looks nothing like the pictures. you're like, wait, why is the light like this? So it was like kind of figuring out like, okay, what are we gonna do that we're gonna throw a dart and say that's the target we want to hit. How far can we get to it? And the audience will never know what we were aiming for, but they'll see what it was.
Yeah.
Which is really special. But it's like kind of like when you're trying to solve these issues on set, making creative decisions in a short amount of time. It's like you against yourself, trying to figure out like, how can we do this better? Knowing that like there are wrong ways to do it, but as long as we keep trying to get to that better level, it's gonna be like people are gonna notice.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's sweet.
Yeah.
If you had to, I'm sure this is hard to like put a number on, but if you had to give a percentage to like how much of that production of those, how many days were you in the cabin?
5 days.
So of those 5 days, like if you had to give a percentage to how much went according to plan versus how much was like, oh shit, like we got to figure it out and like just, running gun, just like winging it and like adapting as you go. Like what was the percentages would you say?
I'd say 60-40.
Okay.
60% we knew what we were doing, 40% we're figuring it out.
I personally love hearing like behind the scenes of stuff like behind the scenes documentaries and behind the scenes interviews and just so I love hearing the process, and I think that's cool to hear that. I'm sure a lot of other filmmakers probably relate that it's not going to go like exactly how you plan. And so you mentioned the lighting and I actually wanted to talk about the lighting because there is a particular dance sequence that is super fun, really, really cool. And it actually ties into the music of the movie, which we'll talk about in a second. But in this dance sequence, there's really cool light, just like different lighting setups. And also just the cinematography of those scenes were everything about those dance sequences were just so cool to me.
Yeah.
And afterwards, they were just saying how kind of complex and difficult and the prep and like the filming was with that lighting setup. So did you want to just talk about that a little bit?
Totally. Those scenes were really, really fun, but also really, really hard. Leading up to the rehearsing of the scene, Suzanne and I didn't have a lot of we had no idea what the living room was going to look like. So I also didn't rehearse it with the actors because there were so many other things to rehearse. So I said, get ready to lip sync these songs. I just told them, get ready to sing these songs out loud. And plus, they spent 3 weeks getting to know each other. It's going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But lighting the room was really, really difficult because, there's only so many places you could put a light shining that bright of a color before the color grading that came over it. And we set certain moods of like, this song feels very this way. And yeah, it like doesn't need to be completely realistic, but that's like part of the fun of the story.
Yeah.
But I will say like, trying to solve lighting issues really fast is really difficult. It took about 2 hours to prep, and we shot for another 2.5 to 3.
Wow.
And that was like
just for those sequences. It was like
sequences.
3 hours of wow.
Because it was like we set all the lights, shot the first about a minute and a half of each song. Said okay, let's switch to the next one. Actors go take a break, and then we have to change all the gels. We changed the gels, changed all of our RGB bulbs. And then like made sure that we can't make sure you don't see the light during any of the scenes, but we want different angles. Early in our prep, I decided what sections. I told the actors, here are the sections I'm realistically going to use of the song.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like the song number 1 was like 1:12 to 1:45.
Yeah.
I also told Suzanne, we're going to shoot for 30 seconds of this song, make some choices, and then we have 3 more songs to get through. So make more choices. And I also told the actors, make other dancing choices.
Mm.
Great. We want the lighting to look similar but different. And it was just like trying to figure out, where do we put these freaking lights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the dance sequences, they were super fun, and I'm sure they were tedious, but it definitely paid off because it was so sick. Now, in terms of the music, when at the festival, your cousin was there, and he said that he actually worked on the score for the film.
Yeah.
Was it all original, or?
Yeah.
So literally all of the music in the movie was all original.
Well, one little asterisk. So Ariel Loud is my cousin. He was the composer. So he made all the music where he did all of the digital audio. I think he described it. He's in the box. So he didn't have any live performers come in to record stuff. But he has a degree in composition from Berklee School of Music. So he did all of the music. And we only had 5 songs that were from my other local Seattle artist friends that I invited them. Can we use your song in the movie? So it was the 4 dance songs, and the end credit song.
Okay, so those 4 in the end credits were other artists that you know, and you just contacted them and got like the rights to use it in your film.
Yeah. Everything else was he wrote.
It just kind of like blew my mind when he said that, because my first thought was, wow, that's a lot of just original.
Yeah.
That's like a lot of work, and that's so cool that you had that connection of someone who could make an original like soundtrack, because I don't know how other indie directors do it to like license. They probably license music, and I know there's like different sites to like license music, but that probably just like is so much cooler that it's like, this is original. It's created for this movie, and you don't have to worry about, licensing some other song that could have been used in some other film at some point. Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's one of the biggest blessings, I think, to work with him. And early on, I told him that this was really important to me too. I told him that he got a bigger stipend than a few of the other members, just especially because I told him that I'm not a composer. I can't make original music.
Yeah.
I can shoot, I can edit, I can act, I can color grade. Like I can technically do everything else, but I can't do what you do. And I told him, if I want them to walk away with anything, I want them to walk away thinking, oh, whoa, the story was like trippy, cool shots, and great music.
Yeah.
And he brought that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was also really cool to say, okay, in this scene, and I've never directed like a custom score for something, but it was fun to have calls, watching scenes with the music over it, and I'll write notes to him and just say like, oh, I think the pace is a little too fast.
Wow. And then, so he could literally customize it to like exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
Which is probably a rare experience to get to do that as a, first feature, because a lot of people, it's probably like I said, do you know what other like indie directors do for music?
It's someone
do people
usually
license it usually? I
think it depends. Yeah. Because, if you license it, it doesn't mean that every song is going to sound the same.
Yeah.
But I think most of the time they'll just find, film composers to do scores for stuff.
Gotcha.
But it depends on like, one day I really hope to give him the opportunity and like contract him work where he can go to an orchestra and just listen and go, okay, go.
Yeah.
And like listen to it and tell the orchestra, do it again.
Yeah.
Right. But it was so beautiful just to be like, for such a small film like ours and such a like devoted team, for me to be like, can you land this note the moment Ruth looks up? He'll be like, sure.
Yeah.
So when she like looks up or the door slowly opens, he can do a little bit like a little violin like.
Yeah.
So it was just so cool to just be like, can you do that? He'll be like, yeah. But he'll do it in the way he likes to do it, which I believe in his vision.
Yeah. That's so awesome. I love that. So we've talked about, working with the actors, the lighting, the music. I guess I can't believe we've gone this far without talking about the cinematography itself, because after the movie, I messaged Suzanne and I was just like, first of all, congrats on the movie, but like also just like, wow, I was just like blown away with how great it looked seeing it on the big screen. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think I said something like, I just didn't know that like an indie feature could look this great. And that's not to, when I sent that, I kind of worried because I'm like, I hope she doesn't think that it's like, oh, I didn't know that it could like not look shitty. Like, I didn't mean that. I just meant like, it really felt like a bigger feature. It didn't feel like it was like a senior capstone project, which I'm sure was your goal from the beginning and you succeeded at that. But Yeah, do you want to just talk about like working with Suzanne and how you guys developed like the visual identity for the movie?
Yeah. Geez, she's so talented. This was our first project working together, and I will say it was a journey working with her and then the rest of the crew to like figure out some of these shots, because I I keep saying it's all like from the budget. It's like not just of money, but like how much time do we have to set to some of these?
Yeah.
A lot of the scenes, it was like just like, what can we do with the space? What can we do with this beautiful island? Also wanted to shout out Jackson Scallon, who's our drone operator. He did all the drone shots. He came just on like a few days of the shoot and did all that. But I know that Suzanne's background, she's really into a lot of like obviously really famous movies, but also documentaries too. She watches a lot of documentaries, and I think you can probably kind of tell some of the shots. You feel like a person in the room in a certain different way that other features might shoot it. I also was really big fan of the way she used like the wide scenes, shooting through things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, how many doorways did we shoot through, or how many like random windows that like, just because the house, the set had all those big glass windows in the living room too.
Yeah.
And she has a great eye for it. And it was just like trying to find a way of like making sure the last shot and the first shot, they all like, you're right, it's one story rather than like, it looks like it's shot by 5 different people, but she made sure it like was consistent. All the way through.
Yeah. No, I think I told her my 2 favorite shots were, first of all, my favorite was probably the 5-minute like monologue or discussion with Ruth and her friend out on the table outside. But then I think my other favorite shot was when, I forget, what's Austin's character's name?
Nikhil.
When Nikhil and who was he? When he was down, like it was him way in the distance, and he's like, it's kind of like he's in the shadows.
Oh, with Tara.
Where he's like arguing with Tara. Yeah. I thought that was just so sick because like the ocean was all lit up, but then like and the trees and the characters are like just really dark and like in the shadows, and it's just like from the distance, I don't know, it just looked really cool.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Yeah, we were just like trying to be creative with time, and like what have we not done? Like we've done, you know, like in the film we had a circling shot. We have our through the windows outside, and we wrote in the script like it's on the grass grove area somewhere, and we were like, where are we gonna put this? But yeah, Suzanne put the like her long lens on. We told the actors, hey, by the way, we told them when we shot it, Suzanne can't hear you, but we can. So just and also we ADR'd that entire scene.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask about like how do you even do that? Like technicality wise, like how do you do the audio for shots like that?
Yeah, we didn't have any. Well, it's funny because, you know, in theater they do all the clip-ons. Yeah. Or they'll do the lav mics or the top mics, but I didn't have any of those, and they sound kind of different than a typical boom mic for a film.
Yeah.
So me and my boom op, Matt, we hid in a bush right next to them, out of frame.
Wow.
So that when Suzanne was looking like from the distance, we're covered by the bush.
Yeah.
But he's aiming the mic up so that when they cross to that spot, we hear them enough, and with enough tree rustling, score, and bird chirping, we can ask them like, okay, just re-deliver your lines. And I just told them like, just know that we can kind of see your mouth, but we can't see your mouth.
Yeah. Okay. So just to clarify what you're saying, so you guys, when you filmed that shot, you guys were hiding there behind the bushes with a boom mic
near them. Yeah.
Near them. But is the reason you had to ADR because that audio just wasn't good enough? Like, were you guys not able to get close enough to where you could have quality audio?
Yeah, it was not. It was like farther away than this wall.
Yeah.
And plus the way that they were turning, and it's sometimes I think it's like part of the directing process. It's like, you know, what are you gonna give up? Are you gonna give up the movement of the scene or the audio quality? This time I was like, okay, let's scrap the audio quality. I want Nikhil to walk and turn a little bit. I want him to be like kind of like frustrated, but also them to be really small in the scene.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, Suzanne's like, I can't freaking hear anything.
Yeah.
She's like, she can barely hear them.
So when you were
Yeah.
recording that audio, was the plan from the beginning to just use that audio just as reference audio for them to ADR later?
Yeah.
Like you had no intention of actually using that.
It was talking with my sound mixer later. We and that was Jake Escobar. Love him. We had to go back and forth of like, okay, do we have time to ADR this or is it more work? But that one scene, it was just like it sounds like the mic's in a different room.
Yeah.
Or like 15 feet away. And it's just like,
You couldn't salvage it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like I wrote this scene where I was like, we're not cutting the audio from this and we're not going to fake it because I need him to wonder why this is all happening. So it was like kind
Yeah.
of like trying to, in a perfect world, like trying to make it all happen as much as we could.
Yeah. Was that hard what's that like doing ADR? Because I guess I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just more curious because I've never talked to anyone who's worked on that. Like, do you have them come in and like, how do you kind of match the audio and was it hard for them to deliver it in the same way?
Yes. I wasn't the one doing it, but so working with Jake, he's a really great sound engineer and has a lot of equipment to do it. So when on the day where we needed to ADR, very similar to this, I had headphones on, he had headphones on. We'll ask the actors to like step up to the mic. He'd have two screens, one with his sound levels. I mean, I don't know all of the programs. And then he'd have the film going. So he'd go, okay, 1, 2, 3. And then we'll hear the lines and then they'll go and say it.
So the actor would be hearing their original audio as they're voicing over it.
Yeah. So we told them like you can either, I call it like an echo when like you hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or they can try to watch themselves do it and nail it perfectly, which is so difficult.
Yeah.
But also like, I think that now I know if in my next film, I should probably steer away from any situations where it's like, we need pin perfect ADR because it's impossible. It's like, it like takes so much more time on the back end later.
Yeah.
That it's better to just put the mic right here, literally right in front of them, somehow get a really clean take. Cause that audio is like with all the room tone and atmosphere sound, like you can't replicate that as well in a studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, my actors were like so thankful they rehearsed all the scenes enough to make it happen. Like it's a lot of work for them.
Yeah. So I obviously want to talk to you about the post-production. Being an editor myself, I'm just kind of curious, but I figured I kind of wanted to go through this whole interview, like the time in the order in which you like made the movie. So we'll talk about editing in a second, but I guess unless you have anything else, the last major thing I wanted to talk to you about the actual production of it and your time on set is, did you pick up or learn any particular things that you struggled with as a director? Or something you said earlier is like, what haven't we shot yet when you were working with Suzanne? Like what's different, or like what do we have too much of or not enough of? I guess I'm sure you learned a ton. So I guess that could be the broader question, like what did you learn? But more specifically, what did you pick up on that like, oh, this is a habit that I have as a director that you kind of have to combat, or like things that you intuitively maybe would like gravitate towards where you kind of have to catch yourself and be like, hey, like, don't do that. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That does. Yeah.
Like, what did you pick up on about yourself through the process of making this movie?
Yeah. The biggest lesson I think I've learned from making this, and I mentioned this in front of our first premiere weekend and like the screening when we had our Q&A. I need to trust my team. There's a reason why they're there. And I'm also very protective over my friends and my people, I'd say, especially because I'm such close collaborators with them that I need to, because I used to do it all on my own. I used to be like I used to content create for myself, write, direct, edit, shoot, act, do freaking everything. But it's also like, it's not about if they can pull off your vision, you take your idea and you hand it to them. And it's like, that's why I'm trusting you to like take it and then you do what you want with it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking that like to say yes to more of what my team wants. If an actor is like going down this rabbit hole of something, follow them down it. Like it's shutting them down, shutting other people down about their ideas, unless it's imperatively destructive towards the process.
Yeah.
Like there's no harm to that. Because at the end of the day, what is good of the film will make it in the film. There's, I mean, I think from editing that like 90% is cut.
Yeah.
There's so much good that like it's like, oh, we could have saved so much time not doing it, but you needed to shoot those scenes to know that it didn't work.
Yeah.
And I still believe in like fill the room with people you trust and fill the room with people who you can be creative around, because I think that if with those people, the film will shoot itself. It will happen. It's hard, but like that's why your team, if you handpick the team, they're there because they want to be there and they're having fun, and we all have matched the same vision of like, what are we aiming for?
Yeah.
And those are some of the biggest lessons I've learned.
Yeah. Did you guys have fun the whole time? Like, were there any moments where you were like, just like, oh my God, this is so stressful. This is like too much. What's going on?
Yeah.
Like, was it fun the whole time, or were there moments where you're like, oh my God, what's going on?
I think that I would say I had fun the whole time, even during the hard times. I think that especially on set for the cabin shoot, because it was back to back to back, every night around 11 o'clock, I'd have a mental breakdown while looking at the scenes. While everyone was like going to bed, I'd be sitting there with my laptop and then the script and then my schedule and be like, shit, bro, how are we going to do all this? And I tried to break it down. I tried with like, we shot it in Kingston, which is like across the Edmonds Ferry. So it's still Washington, but you know, sun goes up at 8, sun goes down at 4.
Yeah, you're doing it in December.
And I was like, what are we going to do with 8 hours? I was like trying to like budget, okay, this scene 37, an hour, 30 minutes. But then there's all these things of like, yeah, wind, and it was like kind of like, it's like work. You know, you're working. It's fun, but it's also like, it's time to go to work.
Yeah.
It's never going to be easy. You just start to do it faster.
Yeah.
A little bit.
What was the feeling like when you guys finally wrapped the filming? Like when you finished filming the last scene of your first feature,
Yeah.
what was that like? Like, what did it feel like?
Yeah. We have two really memorable moments with that. So the last day at the island, so the main shoot, I think you'll definitely remember the shot. So basically I was working with Suzanne and Barb with camera and lighting to try to pull off the shot. I think that Suzanne and we talked about, it's a very difficult shot, but it's the one where Ruth falls into bed and she's holding her notebook.
Yeah.
It's that top shot that like, we don't have a crane. We literally stuck a tripod through another tripod and like held it up.
Wow.
But we were like, how are we going to emulate moonlight? Because in this script, it's nighttime. I'm like, she's not going to turn another light on. I don't know. Suzanne was like, could we, smush it into another scene? And I was like, no, we're not cutting scenes. We're not cutting scenes on set. We'll cut scenes later. But after that shot, we shot it like twice where she falls back. And then basically it was a really fun night where for that scene, we switched up all the roles. Suzanne didn't press record. Someone else was on slate other than my friend Hannah, who was our slate for the whole, like basically like someone hopped in and did this, someone pressed record. Like it was just really funny.
Yeah.
And then we did it. And then right afterwards, the other team members who weren't in the room just burst in and we were just like screaming. We're like, let's go. We did it. Let's go. We did it. And we were like just screaming and like, we were just like, oh my gosh, we're done. Like, I was like, we're done. Like everyone knew that like, this is the last shot.
Yeah.
It was 12:45 Thursday and we were there since last Friday.
Oh my God.
But the actual last shot was definitely much more underwhelming. It was in the pool where we had booked a pool out for like 4 hours to do all of our underwater scenes, all of our water talking scenes, which just water prep takes forever.
Yeah.
Like knowing you always need a towel and like continuity of stuff.
Yeah.
Basically the last scene that we shot was when Ruth was underwater in the pool. And I was camera opping that. So I stuck my camera with the water housing underwater. Yeah. And then it was like, we literally had 10 minutes to clean up everything. And I was trying to take more pictures of her. So Anna, who's played June, said like, yeah, I'll say the thing. And then I looked at the camera. I was like, that's a wrap.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, gotta take more pictures. And then we were like, that was basically, and then people started cleaning up. So it wasn't as fun.
So that one wasn't like, it was the last shot, but it wasn't the celebratory like last shot.
Yeah. And at the cabin, we like did the last shot, kind of put our stuff away, and then had like a dance party.
Oh, that's so wholesome.
Yeah, and like we were just like eating and drinking and like just like we were just like kind of like we're like athletes that kind of just binge out. We were like We were just vibing.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
That's so cool. I love that. I guess I forgot to mention the last thing about the production of it is you guys, I mean, it's called Ocean's Arrival. You're on this island and there's a couple scenes where people are in the water
Yes.
in the middle of December in Washington, which must have been hilarious and freezing.
Yes, that was yeah, no. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I know we already kind of passed this, but like, how did you get the actors to go in the water? Like, how many takes did you have to do? And
So with that, and this is again, I can't thank my team enough for trusting me because, you know, once you've watched a film, you understand like how involved water is in this movie. And it was in the script before. So it was like, yeah, you wrote a script that has water and now you're bringing in actors who need to jump in the water, put a camera in the water. And especially with the like outdoor ones in the open like salt water, we just made sure that it was like the last thing we needed to do. Jordan and Austin are troopers for jumping in. I mean, well, Bree also had to get in a little bit. Olivia, who played Tara, also had to get in. Basically everyone except Anna had to jump in the water. It just was like, how do we make sure they don't die? But like, if you ask us like, what are our regulations or what are the safety? I'll be like, it's a student film.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, well, yeah, we just made sure that we did all of our like coverage leading up to it. And certain moments when we needed to get fully submerged, we were like, okay, that's the last thing. We got towels on deck. What you're going to do is get in the water as you need to and run the fuck out.
Yeah.
And then we'll throw towels on you and get in the shower or something, or like get warm.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was super fun, but like, gosh, I can't believe I still am so thankful they trust me to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to do it for the shot.
Right.
And it worked.
Yeah.
This is not a super exciting question, but I'm just curious. In terms of like permits or like the legal aspect, did you have to get like permits to film or do you just kind of just wing it?
I think that's a great question. We mostly winged it. I will say, for the record, if anyone's wondering, like, oh, what permits? I also wonder what permits we would have needed. You know, I mean, we flew a drone. The owner of the Airbnb knew we were shooting. He was invited to watch the film.
Yeah.
We didn't. I mean, we were on private property for the majority of it, but it was like getting that property because of the look of the film. But I mean, I probably could have looked more into like what we needed to do to shoot there.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I don't really care. I mean, I'm not trying to like set you up for something. I was just curious because I didn't know if like through the school, if they required like, hey, you got to do these certain documents or anything like that. Or
honestly, as far as it's concerned with the school, the only involvement from the school was they provided rehearsal space and my advisor helped me.
Everything else is like you figure it out.
Yeah. Like I even throw on that like this was a student film. Also, I mean, for so many people, I mean, for the rest of, you know, the team mostly, this isn't a student film to them. This is like portfolio work. This is real work for my cousin composing. This is actual stuff he's going to use to get the next gig.
Yeah.
And I only throw the synopsis in that like, this is a student film so that we can compete in certain student categories. And if I need a little brace to be like,
it's just a student film.
It's just a student film. But that's something I told everyone too. I was like, the best thing that anyone can say to us is, it's a student film.
Yeah.
But if it sucks, it's a student film. You know?
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we got to cover a lot in terms of the production of it, or the pre-production and the production.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of the post-production, so I guess the last few things I want to talk about is the post-production and then also the festival process.
Yeah.
And also like what you want to do next. So this is not really related, but I'm just curious. Do you know how many total like gigs of footage you had or terabytes?
Oh yeah. We shot 1.5 terabytes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's crazy.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, your other cousin Quan was a lead editor, or did you edit with him? Did you guys edit together?
Yeah. The majority of his work he was like assistant editor. Okay. I did all of the main editing, and then he did a lot of the review with Suzanne, because Suzanne also is AD afterwards and checked stuff after with us. So it was us three kind of in the editing room, later when I did most of the bulk myself just because I had the footage, I had a rig that could edit it, and I like had the script in front of me and did all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he also was an AC on set, but he definitely gave a lot of notes about like, should we shorten this clip? Leading up to picture lock, it was us three in the editing room just like watching cuts over and over and over again.
Yeah. Once you guys got back from filming, how long before the editing process did you start right away?
I tried and was like, I'm so burnt out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The majority of the editing happened like so December was main production with 1 day in January and 1 day in February. Middle of January, I started like editing hard, and then we picture locked in March.
I'm just gonna geek out for a second. Like I'd love to know like the programs what programs you used, what the process was in terms of figuring out what to cut, what you're leaving in, and I guess also I'm just kind of curious about like the coloring and like the sound process.
Yeah. With the editing, so I did the majority of the editing at my home studio on my rig.
Yeah.
Basically I started with, like most scripts are, it's all written in scene headings, but I numbered it so there's 80 scenes in the film. Not that there's 80 different cuts in the film because we fudged stuff later.
Yeah.
But there was 80 scenes and I started editing every single one and lining up first boom audio, getting that lined up. And it's kind of crazy to like, I literally so I started with Premiere. I edit in Premiere. We colored in DaVinci. Rohan Merrill's our colorist. The trailer was cut in DaVinci as well. And score, Ario used a combo of things. I think maybe Logic with a couple of different plugins. And then our sound mixer did the cleanup in Ableton, I believe.
Yeah.
Also ADR in Ableton, maybe. Actually, I could be wrong. Who knows? But it was a lot of different things that like I started off with the cuts. And it's kind of wild to look at the different timelines. I have a timeline for every single scene.
Wow.
And it's kind of be like, okay, can you pull up this exact scene? Because I have the script in front of me. And it's kind of fun, like when, like, if you're editing documentary footage or other like run and gun stuff where it isn't script based, it's kind of like right there in front of you. But like with the script and filmmaking process, I feel like it's so interesting being able to say like, okay, this is what you wanted 3 months ago. And this is what you got.
Yeah.
So like, how are we gonna put it together?
And are there times where certain of I'm sure when you're on set, you're obviously looking and like rewatching what you just filmed to like make sure it's actually what you wanted. But
yeah,
when you're actually sitting down, you're done filming and you're in the editing process, are there times where you're like, this is, like you said, this is way different than what I originally had planned, or like, this is better than what I had in the script originally, or I'm sure there were probably times too where you're like, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but we're going to have to make it work.
All of the feelings. I think you know exactly how it was like, yeah, exactly that. I joked with everyone like post-production, I was a different beast. Because you're so much more critical. Because like, great, the fun's done. We've done all the things, and now it's like, you can't say like, how are we going to do this? It's already the footage is in that hard drive in front of you. So now you can be really freaking critical. So it was kind of difficult to like go from this being on set and having it be like, okay, let's create and let's get the shot, get this. And then now it's suddenly like, I call it like destroy mode because it's just cutting, trimming.
Yeah.
And like analyzing things. And I've been trying to work on within myself as an artist too, that like something my professor told me, she said that you can't create and critique yourself. You can't create art and critique yourself at the same time. That's something that's really important to me. And I'm trying to work on that too with editing, but that's all critiquing is. It's just like, it's trimming what is good and what isn't good to what you think your version of is good.
And that, I mean, that, a lot of directors don't edit their own work. And I mean, for a lot of people, when you're starting out, you're going to be the one writing, directing, and editing it. But like, in some sense, that's probably tough because, the editor serves, like you said, it's kind of like a role where it's like, it's not negative, but like in my head, I kind of view the editor sometimes as the one who's like, no to that. And like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're just like you said, you're just cutting stuff. And it's like, this process of kind of just like weeding out all the stuff that's not quite good enough.
Right.
Was it hard to decide what you're leaving in and what's going to be cut? Like, were there times where you're like, no, I really want to leave that, but
Yeah.
I know that I probably should just cut it?
Yeah, there was some of the scenes were longer before. And it also, for me, interestingly, because I'm used to like being in theater and every night you do something one time, but like when you have 5 takes of the same thing, and I'm trying to be honest with myself, I'm like, which do I actually like better?
Oh, that's tough. You're
It's
like,
the
they're
same-
so similar.
So similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, dude.
it's just like kind of like making decisions when I didn't feel like I need to ask Quan. I need to ask Suzanne. Like I need another opinion just because like I'm sitting here trying to remember why did I make that decision in this shot, or why did we push in? How did we misfocus?
Yeah.
All of these things of like how did we all do this? And I think that your analogy of like editing is not, you're right, not negative, but I think it's the same way where like painters blank canvas, they put stuff down while photographers have to decide what's in my box frame.
Yeah.
And editors, I think the same thing, like what's gonna make it into the cut versus
Yeah.
acting and like filming. Well, acting is like creating, filming is like
And then
editing is like
doing that
even more. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun, but like also like, whew. In the future, I think I'll probably work with Con again. He's a really gifted editor too. So in the future, I hope to be in more positions where I'm not the one making the cuts myself, but I'm describing him the feeling I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Because he'll know what to do. It's like faster pace, whether and where he cuts in time, that's up to him.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm subscribed to this one YouTube channel where it's just like editing tips, and it's this guy who's like a professional editor, and he just gives like tutorials and stuff. But something he said years ago that has always been in my head is every editor has their own style. Like at least the editors I've met, they have a whole different workflow and process than how I like to do things, and everyone's different. But something he said that was so interesting is to not constantly rewatch the edit, because the more you rewatch your own edit, you kind of get numb to nuances or things that should change. Because if you've been there for 6 hours and you've rewatched like a 1-minute clip like 200 times, like you said, you need another pair of eyes. And so I just thought it was cool. Like a tip he had was to avoid that feeling of like, I don't even know if these scenes are different. I can't like even tell what to change anymore. He's like, if you can minimize the amount of times that you like rewatch something that you edited, you'll limit how like blurry it gets. Does that make sense?
That does.
I don't know. And I
Literally,
mean,
yeah.
obviously there's times where like you have to rewatch stuff like a bunch of times sometimes to make sure it's perfectly right. But I just thought that idea of like, don't rewatch your own edit all the time, because like your brain just gets into like a groove where like you can't objectively look at it anymore.
Yeah.
I guess his point was also sort of just like, the more you watch something, the more you just like glaze over it. And so something he also said was, if you really are having trouble with an edit, like just like leave the part you're struggling with and come back to it the next day. And like you'll probably have a different view of it if you watch it like 2 days later or the next day, when it's like, if you first walk in and like turn on your computer and rewatch it, you'll probably view it differently than after watching it 300 times, you know?
Definitely.
Did your school let you edit it in whatever program you wanted? Because when I was in film school, our projects, at least freshman year, I mean, I left after freshman year, but they made us use Avid. Have you ever?
I've heard of Avid.
Bro, Avid sucks.
Yeah.
It's just, well, I mean, in my opinion, Avid is just really confusing, and like,
man.
I'm sure it's great for like the top level editors,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think it's cool. Like I've always used Premiere and After Effects and stuff. So I was just curious, like if they let you do it in Premiere.
They actually, because luckily with all my theater faculty, they trusted me to know what I needed to do and how to get it done. They don't care. I mean, they're like acting professors, and like design professors, where they're not even using the programs anyway. But that is really interesting of like knowing like the professionals are using Avid, where some will have thoughts about Premiere. But I'm just really comfortable in Premiere, but I'm trying to eventually work into DaVinci.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of editors now, or I mean, some editors have because DaVinci used to be just for color grading. Like back in the day, not like back in the day, not like that long ago, but like 6-7 years ago,
Yeah.
I remember DaVinci Resolve was always talked about, but it was always just like, that's the program to color grade.
Mhm.
And that's in my head, that's all I thought it was used for. But now there's a lot of editors that are coloring in that, but also just editing
Yeah.
their entire project in there.
It exports really fast. Are you familiar with it? Do you
I don't
use
really
it?
use DaVinci a whole lot. I mean,
Yeah.
the projects I make are always pretty like film edit upload within like 2 days. So
Yeah.
my projects are much more not that professional.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't need to do a super crazy color grade.
Sure.
But yeah. So
Yeah.
you think eventually you're gonna move towards editing in that?
Probably. Yeah, I think because Kwan's really comfortable. That's his thing. Is he's really good in DaVinci. So I think finding more like ways to get on his level for stuff. Plus, because we ran into this issue where we were editing in Premiere, but Rohan, our colorist for Ocean's Arrival, needed it to be in DaVinci, and I couldn't just send him. I had to export the whole film, but I couldn't send him the RAWs. They were just too big. But
Oh,
also, you
yeah.
can't just upload RAWs like that into DaVinci. There's like some. We ran into some
It's
little
not
logistical-
compatible
Exactly.
always.
like or the other way around. Like we couldn't get it back, and it was like we had to just like spit it out, and then he had to upload it again.
So you'd have to export a clip, send it for coloring, and then like he'd export it again.
I think actually, so when we picture locked in like March, I had to send him the like highest res possible, which he said was more of a backup because I couldn't send him the footage.
Yeah.
Usually, I think that we just send him the footage, send him the timeline, and he'd just go like find media, connect it. But plus, he's editing in DaVinci, so he doesn't like he's not going to open a Premiere
Yeah.
anyway, and he's not going to color in Premiere. So I was like, I should just start editing in DaVinci so that I can help
Make it all easier.
make the post production teams like a little more happy with me when they color it. type
Yeah.
of thing.
Was that process of getting the color just right? Was that pretty tedious?
A little bit. And I really love the way that Rohan was the way he worked through. It's a lot about, for us, it was about our, as much as what the footage looks like, it's like, what are we inspired by? So he kept asking for like inspirational inspo references of like every scene, every daytime scene. What do you want every single one to look like if you had to pick one? So I picked one from like The Godfather or like Memento, which are two favorite movies of mine.
Dude, Memento is like, it's in my top 4.
It's so good, right?
Dude,
Yeah.
Memento, that's so awesome because I always say Memento's my favorite movie, and then everyone's always just like,
What? Yeah, everyone's like,
it's not that they don't like it,
Oh.
but it's like, oh, Christopher Nolan has so many other better movies. I'm like, no,
no, it's
Memento's my favorite.
that one. That actually was a big inspo for this film, actually, a little bit.
And you can kind of tell because like
time.
the timeline thing.
yeah,
Yeah, dude.
Um,
I love that. I
it's so
love
good.
Memento.
yeah.
I just get so excited when other people love that movie.
it's such a joy. But yeah, it was really cool to just be like, yeah, this is what I want the shot to look like. It's sort of a different movie. Rohan would try to emulate that, but then on the way, putting together our 80 scenes, he did his first pass with every single one, but then like did some overall like grain, a little bit of grain to it, or making sure that all of the like skin tones. He that's the thing is I'm not good at that. I'm like really glad to bring another person on board just because that's like his thing, and that's
Yeah.
what he has a lot of joy in and he can deliver in. Can you make this person's face like a little bit brighter? Just the face. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, yo, that's cool. I couldn't like, it's just kind of cool to like hear people being able to do the things that like you can imagine.
Yeah. You can imagine and you could try to do it,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be as good as if you had like a whole team.
Right.
Well, yeah, man. I feel like we covered a lot
Yeah.
in regards to like the production of the film and everything. I guess the last couple questions here are: one, will it at some point be available for people to watch?
Yeah, we put it out after December 21st, and it's now available to watch. If you go to at Ocean's Arrival on Instagram, you can find the way to watch the film. So it's gonna be it's public, available for people to watch.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, a few just little like smaller things before we wrap up that I wanted to throw out there. One, will it be on Letterboxd, do you think? Is that possible?
I'm trying to figure it out. I have a letterbox, and it's actually funny when it like premiered in May. I had a few friends screenshot their letterbox and send me it that they were like I think it's like has to do with IMDb.
Yeah, I don't know how the process works to get it uploaded there, but I just, for my sake, I would just love if it was available because I'm just a huge Letterboxd nerd.
I'm gonna find a way. I need to find a way to get it on there.
Okay, cool. Well, I feel like we've got to cover a ton about this film. So first of all, thank you. Like, this has been really cool. And I wanted to end this with a thought or something that I'm personally passionate about. So a sentiment that's been thrown around for a while is that some people feel like cinema is dying. You hear, at least I hear that on social media and YouTube, and whether or not you agree with that statement is besides the point. But I think something a lot of people could agree is that a lot of these movies that are getting, releases nationwide are reboots, remakes, and sequels. And those are great. And I think they're super enjoyable and they're fun. But for me as a film lover, I love just the original creative stories that really dive into like the human emotion and like the human aspect, and like, to me, really feel like what the cinematic art form is all about. And so watching movies like Ocean's Arrival really makes me excited. And I think it's also inspiring because it's proof that like cinema's not dying. Like these like original ambitious films are out there. They're everywhere. They're internationally, they're indie directors. Like, so when people say cinema is dying, it's like, it's not. It's just, I think that term is like, I maybe don't know where to find the type of stuff you want to watch, but that's a very clunky way of saying I thought the film was amazing, and it makes me excited about like the future of the next generation or the up and coming generation of directors. So
thanks, Sean. Dude, I appreciate you having me on. I wanted to kind of add to what you were saying. I hear that sentiment kind of often of like what the impact that film and cinema has now on a changing generation. But it's actually really funny that you mentioned about the reboots and remakes of stuff, just because since I come from a theater background, they have a whole category at the Tonys that are classic works or golden age, right? But like most Shakespeare is like redone. Yeah. But it's not about like, the thing is, they still revere the script. They revere the script so much that they don't change the words in the script, but it's who is doing the directing, who's acting, who's in it. But I just feel like on both ends of film and theater, I think that they're just gonna adapt to where we are in life, and it just happens that where we are in life is like this weird control and or domination of like media. I was listening to another podcast or someone where they said like, we used to go to the movies and buy a ticket, and you have to be there at the start time with your popcorn and with your family to watch it, or friends. Yeah. On one screen that you can't stop or start. But nowadays you can go to your bed, grab your laptop, and watch anything on Netflix you want. And you can, your friends are asking you to hang out, so you're gonna pause the movie. But it's like, we used to go to the movies and like, you had to be there at that time on a screen that you couldn't stop or start with popcorn with your friends or whatever. But nowadays, you can have a bunch of subscriptions and watch a movie in your bed on your laptop by yourself and pause and start with subtitles or without subtitles. And it's this weird, like, we suddenly are not like we're in control of the media we're consuming, while back in the day, you aren't as much, where the silver screen is devoid of what does it matter that we are going to the movie or not? It's still going to play. Yeah. It's still going to happen. But I feel like on both ends of like theater and film, and I just think that people need to be going to events to see it, because there should be a certain respect towards the craft of it. Yeah. And also it's adapting, and it's always a reflection of society. I strongly believe that like art, film, theater, performance, everything that we're consuming is just a reflection of society, whether it be on your phone on TikTok or you're going to the movies, Yeah, no, I mean, to your point, like I 100% agree with what you're saying. And I think, like you said, you're now in control, and you can pause it. You can go to the bathroom. You can go get a snack. You could like fast forward. On Netflix, they have an option where you can watch stuff on 2x speed. Like you can literally change the playback speed. Weird. And I'm like, that's just so like, that's so like a
weird.
YouTube thing. It's like, it's like this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think that like original, thoughtful, sometimes like difficult cinema is like really, really beautiful. And I think it's really important. And part of the reason I like to make videos about film and stuff is because I want to encourage people to watch stuff that maybe they haven't heard of, or it's not super popular right now, with the hopes that like, can encourage people to go watch, indie films like this. So yeah,
Definitely.
I thought Ocean's Arrival was fantastic. Congratulations on the accomplishment, because
Thanks,
that's
John.
huge.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see whatever you make next.
Thank you, man.
Do you, before we wrap up,
Yep.
you don't have to give it away if you don't want to, but do you have an idea for a next film? Like, are you planning to make another film? Are you going to work on it, or are you letting things chill out for a bit?
Yeah, I've actually been writing a little bit. I did my chilling since we finished the film in May. But my next few projects include finishing my short film series, which is kind of getting back. I call it my first kid. I call it my problem child. Actually, the number one it's called The Mesmerism, which is a bunch of small, short. It was originally 1-minute films made for social media, and then I ended up making 30 of them, and I have plans to do 20 more.
Wow!
So total, it'll be like an hour's worth of film. So similar to Ocean's Arrival, but it's a bunch of different short stories. But if you watch them all together, it's one huge story.
Whoa! Wait, so each one, it's like a 1-minute short, and they're all different stories. But if you watch them all together, they're all one huge story. Oh,
I actually, because of like the whole theater thing, when I started it freshman year. So it's been like 4 years in the making, and you can literally see the growth of my filmmaking just in like exposing a shot, right? Like, I didn't know how to do that 3 years ago. Now I do now. But like, even bringing in storytelling and writing and everything, each of the shorts, they're all different actors, and they're unnamed characters, because I'm like, it's not about who they are. It's about it's all revolving around this theme of tales of the youth. So all these short moments are just like things that I believe that people can empathize with.
Yeah.
But then when you watch enough of them in a row and you start to see the whole story, you're like, oh, something's connecting everything.
Yeah.
So there's that I'm working on. I'm planning to finish that sometime in the next year.
Nice.
And then I'm hoping to do, rather than another feature, I'm planning to do some adaptations of stuff.
Oh,
there's some really awesome books. One of them, I'm saying this, I'm putting it out in the universe. I think maybe in the next year, 2 years. There's Flannery O'Connor is an author. I don't know if you've read her stuff.
I have not.
But she did a lot about the Southern grotesque, which is it was a lot about her reactions to the changing world in America in the South in the 1850s. But I want to see that there's a lot of really awesome short stories that kind of remind me of Black Mirror that are perfect for the 30 to 1 hour film length. I'd love to do a series of that where it's like set either in the Pacific Northwest or at least in the past 20 years. Because a lot of the same sentiments of like, for her, it was desegregation. It was like, they didn't have electricity like we do now, or phones like we do now. But like a lot of those stories, I really want to see if I can bring them from story into film and practice adaptations.
So direct adaptations of her work?
Yeah, of her short stories. A few of them. She's wrote like 20 to 30 different like stories, but I'm probably going to like, there's a 5 I really, really like that I want to find a way to like bring in, just so that I can show future employers and future filmmakers, like I've done a feature, my own original feature.
Yeah.
I've done short story content, and I've also hopefully found a way to do adapted content.
Oh, so you get a little of everything.
Yeah, because I think that like one day down the line, they're gonna want to adapt a book into a movie, and I want to show them I've done a book into a movie
That's
before.
really, that's super smart. That seems like a great strategy. Do you have to get
rights to it? Or
well,
something?
yeah, I was gonna say, like, how do you just go and like legally and adapt some famous author's work?
Yeah, I don't know if what I'll need to do that, but I think it'll depend on how on the nose are we going to be.
Yeah.
Same way Lion King is based off of like Hamlet.
Oh, yeah, I see.
They don't have to pay the Shakespeare company, or like they don't have to pay anyone, because it's
like a loose
public
adaptation.
domain type of thing. Yeah. Like loosely, like we might name a couple things similarly, but I think I'm just really excited. I got a bunch of stories to tell. I'm just trying to find the right team to make it happen in the right time in life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Yao. We will have to have you on again when your next thing's out.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. All Yao's links like to the movie and to his socials will be in the description. So go check out Ocean's Arrival, and I'll see you guys next time.
Great. Thanks, everyone.